Welcome to Life Happens, where Texans come to protect their legacy and prepare for the second half of life. Join your host, attorney Kim Hegwood of Your Legacy Legal Care, and our weekly guest as we navigate the challenges that emerge as life happens. Now here's your host, Kim Hegwood.
Good morning and welcome to Life Happens with me, Kim Hegwood, and our very special guest today is Dr. Monique Nugent. Good morning.
Good morning, Kim. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm super excited to have you. And
Yeah.
so we're going to be talking about preparing families for a hospital stay. And the first thing probably is, somebody's listening to this and they're going, my parents are doing well.
hmm
So why are we pre-planning for them to go to the hospital? And what do you tell them?
Well, so first, a little bit about me. I am a hospitalist, so I only see patients in the hospital, right? You
Okay.
can't make an appointment to see me. I am only in the hospital. And what ends up happening is a lot of care, particularly for our elders, is very crisis centered. People say exactly what you say. Oh, mom's doing well, dad's doing well, auntie's doing well, uncle's doing well, they're fine. And nobody thinks about what happens if they don't do well, or what happens if life happens. What happens if they fall and break something? They get a cold, they start a new medication that makes them a little bit constipated or gives them a little bit of nausea, or they come to visit for Thanksgiving and they get a GI bug from the 3-year-old granddaughter, right? Life. Right? So we think about these things as I don't want to talk about that. When we talk about hospital stays, everyone doesn't really want to think about being sick, which I understand. But getting away from that crisis centered thought process that, oh my goodness, now that something's happened, I'm going to act on it. And thinking more proactively about what do I need to have in order in case something happens. And so, how do I move forward when something happens that is in a way that really honors the person's wishes around treatments, comfort, end of life, long-term goals, and also how do we move forward in a way that is functional for us as a family? So again, moving away from that crisis, something happens and now we configure everything, and we instead go to, we have a conversation, we know that these are our limits, or we know that these are our abilities, and now we can activate that. Now we can lean into that. And that's really why I do this work, is to try and get people out of that crisis focused type of experience, particularly for our elders.
Well, my first thought when you started talking about this was a to go bag. Like you do when you're going to give birth, you have that to go
Mhm.
bag. You have all the stuff you need that's going to make you happy at the
Yeah.
hospital. So what information do you tell people that they need to bring to the hospital with them? I mean, I
Yeah.
know a few things that would be helpful, but I'd like to really hear your take.
Yeah. So the to-go bag isn't particularly for us who are not expecting someone who doesn't have an appointment, right? You go to get a hip replaced, a knee replaced. You've signed up for this. You know what you're getting into. But I want you to move instead to maybe a to-go file, right? And so what I want in that file are documents that are going to help identify who should be the person helping to take care of you, who should be the person speaking for you if you can't speak for yourself, and what exactly are your wishes if you're not able to speak for yourself. So, number one, a healthcare proxy. And your healthcare proxy is a person who you identify to say, hey, if I can't speak for myself, if I'm confused, if I'm kind of too sick, can you please speak for me? I always suggest to people that you ask that person's permission to list them as a healthcare proxy. You'd be surprised how many times I say, oh, your mom listed you as a healthcare proxy. Like, really? I had no idea. Right? So ask their permission and then have a conversation with them around what that means. What type of treatments would you accept? Would you not accept? What are your fears around pain and suffering? What are your long term goals? What are your capabilities? Financially, what are you able to absorb or not absorb? And then after you have that conversation, you're going to write all of that stuff down into a living will or an advance directive, right? And that's another document that you're going to put in your to go file, right? And these two will help support each other. Your healthcare proxy has the information because you've spoken to them, but also it's written down in case there's questions or they can't get to them or you don't have someone listed as your healthcare proxy, right? So these two documents really support each other. And this is where that medical legal, we kind of intertwine here to really care for people in a way that's consistent with their goals and their values. And then the third document, depending on the state you live in, might be called a pulsed or a MULST form, either a portable order or a physician's order of life-sustaining treatment or a mobile order or medical order of life-sustaining treatment. This is a document here in Massachusetts where I live that's a hot pink form. Most of them across the country are hot pink forms that will say what your values are, what your choices around CPR, intubation, IV fluids, dialysis, depending again on your state and how in depth it goes. This form will be filled out and signed with your primary care provider or another medical provider. And that document will live wherever that provider is. So when I complete them with patients in the hospital, it lives in our medical system and scanned, and then they get a copy. And this, again, is another piece of document to really speak for you, to be very clear, so that people understand if you're found down in your home, the EMS sees it, they understand what you want, how they should proceed. You show up to an emergency department, it's scanned in our system. Okay, I've had this conversation with this patient. We know how they would want us to proceed. It's really about supporting you and your choices so that everything that you want done or not done is honored.
So for our listeners, we use medical power of attorneys. And for those, that's what we call our document for someone to make medical decisions for them. And so otherwise
Oh,
you were very close. And so we don't have the pink sheet, but what we did in our directives was in our directives or living will, it talks about terminal and incapacity.
mhm,
But it only talks about those two things. But we went back and listed all those things, which makes ours a little different that you talked about. Do you want CPR? Do you want, but it only reflects those two circumstances.
mhm.
So I'm going to ask you a question as far as what the document that you have. Does it matter if you're terminal or completely incapacitated for that document to kick in, or does it kick in automatically?
That's a really great question. So the Pulse form actually started in Oregon to support people with progressive diseases and who are moving towards the end of their life. This was a document that started years and years ago, I believe in the early 2000s. And there's actually a website, POLST.org, pulse.org, that will have a lovely map and you can click on your state and it will take you to your state's document. Um, it really depends on the state and how much the state has put into that document, but it's meant to support you kind of at any point in time. But its original intention was to help people who were having progressive disease processes that were possibly moving towards end of life so that this document could be readdressed over and over again. And they would, again, anytime the person came into the hospital, had this document to support them. What I tell people is a hospital stay is a great time to readdress everything after you get out the hospital. It's a great time to say, like, now that I maybe have a new diagnosis or I have a different way of functioning, do these things that I've written down still hold? Is the person still going to be my medical power of attorney, right? Is this still true to me and my goals now? But yeah, check out Pulse, POLST.org, because it will depend. You're right. I live in Massachusetts, you're in Texas. It depends on your state what these documents are called and how they play with each other.
Yeah, we don't have that here, but I'm curious to go download one and to see if there's more we can do for my clients, to help. Because a lot of people, you tell them, I need you to have a conversation with your agents who's making those medical decisions. What kind of things
Mhm.
do you want? Because it's really important so that they can make the decisions. And you also want someone that's going to make the decisions that you tell them you want and are going to be okay with it versus what they want,
Yes.
because that's always something. So. now that I've digressed you a little. And so when you're having an emergency or whatever, how do you decide which hospital you should go to?
That I love that question. So hospital stays really depend on information and safety, right? And they go hand in hand. The more information we have about you, the safer you will be in a hospital because your healthcare is really a story, right? What was your kidney function today may not be what your kidney function was 2 weeks ago when you weren't sick, right? Oh, do I want to repeat this MRI when you already had an MRI with your specialist? It's all about how much information we have to get a good treatment plan and make sure that you're safe. And so I tell people if you are tied into a hospital that has access to your records already, right? Somewhere that is associated with your primary care or your cardiologist or your oncologist, and this is the place that you regularly go, going to that hospital helps build the story of your care and helps to maintain consistency in your healthcare planning and consistency with safety, right? Because anything from missing a medication that you may forget to tell us when you walk into the hospital, right? To not knowing how to contact your specialist to make sure we're staying on track with your long-term plan. Those things can really complicate a hospital stay, prolong a hospital stay, but also can lead to outcomes that are not wanted.
So what should you expect during a hospital stay?
So the average hospital stay in this country is closer to 4.5 to 5 days. And that's like a short amount of time to get a lot of things done, if you think about it. So hospital stays are pretty fast-paced experiences. In the beginning, there's going to be a lot of movement around testing, meeting specialists, going over records, examining, and aggressive treatments to make sure you're safe, you're not in pain, and they're able to really get your care moving, right? As those things kind of stabilize, as you've had the EKGs and you've met with the neurologist and you've done all of these things, which tends to be around day 2.5, 3. And you kind of settle into now I'm getting treatments. I'm meeting the specialists who are going to help me with physical therapy, speech therapy, working with your case management or your social worker. And again, those are terms that may vary on the institution that you're in, but this person whose job really it is to help you navigate how you're going to leave the hospital, that now kicks in. And that is huge because a safe discharge and a discharge that sets you up for success afterwards is really what you want. So I've had a lot of people give, great advice about hospital stays. And what I often hear is never leave the hospital without a diagnosis. Like people will say that. And I'm sure you've heard people say that. You got to make sure those doctors tell you what. And I get it. You want a name. People often want a name for something that's going on because that makes you feel like you have information. Um, but what I actually say is never leave the hospital without a plan because a diagnosis may change over time, right? What I think you have today can be very different after you get a bunch of labs back, right? So, as long as you have a plan for how to continue getting care, a plan for how to continue moving forward towards your goals, a plan for how to continue to clarify diagnosis, that's the thing I want you to think about is the key when you're leaving a hospital. If you get to the point in a hospital stay where you're like, I don't know what's happening, and you want me to leave, you got to readdress, circle the wagons back, grab your healthcare proxy, your care partner, your spouse, whoever is helping you navigate that stay. Talk to the doctors, talk to the case managers, the social workers, the people who are setting you up for the next steps. I understand you may not have all the answers, but I want you to have a plan. And that's really what is the key for a successful discharge, that you are leaving with a plan for the next steps.
So for those of us that ended up in the hospital in an emergency situation, how do you stay mentally grounded? Be able to communicate effectively with your doctor and really be an advocate for yourself or loved ones.
So that one is really very difficult because you can't do it alone. So what I tell people is this: imagine your lawyer calls you and says, "Hey, the IRS wants to meet with you. You have this big high stakes meeting. You're meeting the IRS, right? And on the way to the IRS, suddenly you get a headache. You start vomiting. Then when you get out the car, someone runs over your foot, so now you're in pain. And then you sit down with your lawyer or your accountant, and the IRS is going to ask you a whole bunch of really specific questions, high stakes questions that have high stakes outcome, right? That's the experience of the emergency department, right? You're going to meet with doctors that are going to ask you a bunch of really specific questions that can determine high stakes outcomes, right? Like, how long have you been having this chest pain? Tell me what the chest pain feels like. Have you had a fever? And you're sick, you're in pain, you have a fever. You're not really able to answer a lot of these questions really well. And so, what I really advocate for is, if you can, try not to go to an emergency department alone. It might happen that, you get sick at Barnes& and Nobles, you end up in an ambulance. That I totally understand, right? But if you can find a way to have a partner with you, somebody who understands you, knows the story, knows what's been going on, can serve as an extra set of eyes and ears, can serve as also a clear mind to say, well, actually, this thing may have happened before. Or, no, the question you're asking, we have never heard of that medication before. So we're really not sure. Having somebody to be your partner, particularly in the beginning, is really, really key. And if you're caring for somebody, being present in the beginning of their hospital stay is huge. Because what's going to happen is, unfortunately, they'll get admitted upstairs. People may not know who was contacted in the emergency department. They may not know who to contact in the emergency department, right? Or what often happens is, your parent, your loved ones, I'll say, "Hey, I'd love to, reach out to your daughter. Can I call your daughter?" "No, no, don't call her. No, don't call her. She's, the kids have baseball today and she has a really busy day at work. I'll give her a call," right? I, unless, like, I have real concern about their thought process, I legally can't just call any old person. I have to be given permission to share someone's healthcare information, right? And so if your parent tells me outright, "No, don't call my child. Don't call a caretaker." Sometimes we get into this position where then people call. Nobody called me for 2 days. I know. I'm really sorry. We tried. Each time we were told, "No, please don't call. I'll take care of it." And that's really hard for adult children sometimes to grasp, because you want to be there for your parent. But just because they're in the hospital, they don't lose their rights, right? They don't lose their right to privacy. HIPAA still, is something that they have a right to, their own privacy and access, and how they control their health information. And that's why I suggest, if you're someone's caretaker or you're their care partner, show up that first day and reach out. "Hey, Dr. Nugent, I'm Janet. I help take care of mom. Can you please give me a call? Mom, Dr. Nugent's going to call me." I cannot tell you how that simple interaction can really ease a lot of communication issues.
Well, I will tell you, I didn't call the kids. And so, and I didn't call. I figured, until I knew something, there was nothing to tell them, so they didn't find out till I got out the next day.
Oh, see.
I was very bad. So,
So
yes,
you so you understand where we're coming from.
oh yeah,
Yes,
oh yeah.
you
And so
know.
don't get me wrong, I had a lot of anxiety, and I couldn't focus. For me, I couldn't focus on trying to
Mhm,
take care of them because I was
mhm.
having a lot of anxiety at the
Yeah.
time of even being there, so, and maybe when I'm older, but maybe I should say when my kids are older, not
Older.
necessarily me, so.
So, but it is something that I see adult children struggle with, this idea that, um, mom, dad, auntie, uncle, who I'm caring for, um, they're I don't immediately get access to all of their information. The doctors don't immediately call me, right? And like, well, why would you ask their permission? Because I have to. They have the right to their privacy. They have the right to make their decisions. And that's why I really tell people write it down, because just because you don't like mom or dad's decision doesn't mean you get to override mom or dad's decision if they're able to make those decisions for themselves. And those can be hard, like interactions in the hospital for families to go through, right? So if you talk about it beforehand, there may be just a little less angst
Well, there you
if it
go.
needs to be readjusted.
So tell us about your book, Prescription for Admission.
Yeah, so Prescription for Admission is a patient and caretaker facing book, meaning that it's meant for patients and caretakers, people who are interacting with hospitals, maybe not even on a regular basis, but maybe had a bad outcome or want to figure out how to avoid something like that. Or if you're really focused on not going through that crisis type of experience. And it's about what to expect in a hospital stay. Who's who, what's what, why are they saying these crazy things to me like you're NPO? What is an MRI versus a biopsy? What is informed consent? And it's also really focused on your mental health as well. I've got some great sections in there from a psychiatrist, good friend of mine who donated her time to talk about things like sleep. Make sure you're getting sleep. Don't isolate yourself. Have visitors tell us about your psychiatric medications, right? Just because you're in for a heart issue doesn't mean you should be taking your antidepressant. That can really, help with your experience and your outcomes. And I wrote it so that people have more information to understand what their experience in the hospital is going to be like, because you can get dragged through a hospital stay. You can feel just as confused at the end as when you went in. And I want people to feel more empowered to be able to ask questions and move forward in a way that is thoughtful, and helps them with their ultimate healthcare goals.
So, Dr. Nugent, how does somebody, get any information about the book, find you, all those other kind of fun
Yeah.
things?
So you can purchase the book wherever you purchase books online, Amazon.com, BarnesandNobles.com. But I really want people to check out my website, which is drmoniquenugent.com, Dr. Monique Nugent, MoniqueNugent.com. Again, that's drmoniquenugent.com, where you can pick up the book, some free guides, check out my podcast, see events that I have coming up, because I do webinars. I just did one for the state of Massachusetts. I'm really trying to get this information out to people. And then you can also, there's a contact page, but you can also reach out to me via email at Monique@drmoniquenugent.com. So it's Monique, MONIQUE, at drmoniquenugent.com. And that's my email address. And I'm love to hear from you and see how I can be helpful. But yeah, I've got a lot of really great resources for caretakers, for anyone who is really interested in being proactive and learning more about hospital stays and how they can improve their experience and their outcomes.
Perfect. It has been a pleasure to have you on the show today.
It's been a ton of fun.
We look forward to having you on again soon.
Oh, anytime. I love talking about hospitals, which people think is weird, but it's like, it's my thing. So I'm always happy to come back.
Okay, great.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Life Happens with Kim Hegwood. Be sure to tune in every Thursday at 10 a.m. wherever you listen to your podcast as we navigate through the challenges that emerge as life happens. The content of this podcast does not establish an attorney-client relationship or constitute attorney-client privilege, legal, medical, financial, or any other professional advice.